All right. To get started, I'll give a quick intro, but I'd like John and Gideon to each introduce yourselves. John is working on the lobbying side to help advance both pro-energy, pro-power, energy abundance, as well as Bitcoin tangentially related to that, working with Gideon, who is the CEO of Choya, that is traditionally an oil and gas company, but also a Bitcoin mining operator and much more involved throughout the, I'd say, power ecosystem in the ERCOT grid. Could you guys each give a little bit of your backgrounds just to dive a little bit deeper into your histories as well as what you're actively working on?
Yeah. Man, Parker, we go way back. I got some good stories. The first time anyone ever filed an anti-Bitcoin mining bill, I had no idea. What was this, 2018, 19? And Parker and I had no idea what to do, but we literally got in a car and brought like 100 copies of the Bitcoin Standard and just showed up at the Capitol.
I was like, is this the lowest coal courts bill or was this another one?
No, it was the first one. Yeah, we met with that guy. But anyway, like, Bitcoin mining's a game changer. So my background was, my granddad was the American Dream success story. He was forced to become an entrepreneur in 6th grade when his dad passed away, and then he ended up, becoming an entrepreneur in the oil and gas space. The barriers to entry were low, and he was able to start a company. And then my dad was able to grow that company. And so I really have grown up in a family that appreciates the oil and gas entrepreneurship and really is deeply rooted in the principles that allowed Texas and America to thrive. So really, I was working at the family oil business, and I'm a troll. And I saw people complaining about CO2. I don't like to complain. I like solutions. And so we were studying global power markets on how to make money putting CO2 profitably into oil fields. If you don't like CO2, that's good for you. If you like more oil, it's also good for you. So it's mutually beneficial. So through that research, we saw how cheap power was in West Texas if you could curtail. And so that led to me and a few just complete underdogs co-founding Hodl Ranch. And Hodl Ranch is one of my proudest achievements, where we just made shit up. And we built the world's first speculative 100 megawatt campus in the middle of West Texas. And so got some stories there. But then this is just kind of emerged, this energy system, there are inefficiencies. And so for years, many of us have been obsessed with flexible load, grid systems, they're slow. But now we've learned through our work that you can change laws, you can fund research, you can partner with researchers. So Choya exists to really partner with anyone to accelerate energy abundance. And we're really, like this legislative session, with John's partnership and many others, we're extremely focused on making sure there are no bills that discriminate against Bitcoin mining and really allow for safely to reimagine grids and to account for, we need growth. So we need to safely reimagine it, and we need legislative action that allows for safe growth. So my entire existence being here today is to let you know I was a nobody who showed up. Parker and I literally just showed up, and we can effectuate change. And so it's very fun for me. You can just write bills, but you need people like John, because sometimes I say stuff that doesn't get properly communicated.
John, can you give a little bit of your history at ERCOT and the PUC and now where your focus is?
Yeah, y'all are walking in going, wait, is this suit day up here? What are they, if they let these folks in? We obviously have work at the Capitol, or we'd like to probably be a little more dressed down. I started as a chief of staff in the Senate for a state senator, ended up on the Business and Commerce Committee, so started to get into energy, ERCOT, regulation. From there, I went and I was at the Office of Public Utility Counsel, which is a government voice for consumer advocacy in Texas, and especially the residential and small commercial operators. And at the time, I was working there. Winter Storm Uri happened, and my boss by statute was on the ERCOT board of directors. So suddenly, small 9-person government agency is front and center and a lot of discussions around Winter Storm Uri and what went wrong, and certainly trying to do everything we could to help consumers during that time. The Public Utility Commission commissioners that were here they all resigned. Everyone on the ERCOT board was pretty much forced to resign, except for my boss, who was there by statute for the consumers. And then she was appointed. Commissioner Kobos was appointed to the Public Utility Commission and asked me to come over and be her chief of staff. And I was over there for 4 years. So I have a good background in the building. And I was talking to someone yesterday, and they were laughing because I always just call it the building. That's the dome. And then at ERCOT and the PUC, and now left there, was happy to make a connection with Gideon. I've known Parker for years, and we are working to promote some very extensive and very important legislation for Bitcoin and for energy and for the ERCOT market for reliability and affordability. It all comes together.
Okay, before we get into specific legislation, can you explain a little bit, because I don't think this is well understood, the relationship between the legislature, the PUC, and ERCOT, just in terms of how that hierarchy works?
Quickly, the legislature oversees and obviously funds the Public Utility Commission, and the Public Utility Commission, the commissioners have to go through a nomination process to be appointed they're appointed by the governor, but they have to be approved by the Senate. Separately, ERCOT has its own board of directors, which used to be in statute a certain percentage of different stakeholders, but now is an independent board. And so there's the lieutenant governor's office and the governor's office, and I believe the speaker of the House's office. They've appointed the board that approves the board nominees for the board at ERCOT, which is a little more cumbersome and complicated to understand. But at the end of the day, anything that goes through ERCOT, anything over there that's a rule in the market, has to be approved at the PUC, and that includes also ERCOT's budget.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to clarify, does that sound complicated? Yeah, it is. I mean, that's what this entire system is set up to prevent change. Understandably, change introduces uncertainty. So I still don't understand how all this works, but if you want to get change, it's a rules-based system. So you can learn this. That's why it's great to know guys like John.
And that it's not just going to ERCOT, you have to actually work through the legislature.
This is a fun philosophical, because legislation is law. So there's going to be a higher barrier to getting law passed. But if you get law passed, you can move a little faster.
Got it. Okay, now Gideon.
I would just piggyback on that to say ERCOT has their own rules or protocols that sometimes can do what you want to be done in law, but obviously they can change, but they also move a lot. It takes years often for protocols because of the stakeholder process. I mean, it can take 5-6 years for a protocol to get through. You can pass a bill sometimes a little quicker.
Interesting. Gideon, can you talk a little bit about and then we'll dive into SB6 and HB3970. Talk more generally about the role of Bitcoin mining in promoting grid reliability from kind of a foundational level. You talked about, kind of having an interest in flexible load, but just talk about how Bitcoin mining is already contributing to grid reliability and why, maybe to set the table.
Yeah, I think, man, this is such a complex and beautiful story to think about, reflect on, and research and influence into the future. The power grid is the most important machine on Earth. It is an allocator of resources. It was pioneered by the Americans. Thomas Edison had this idea, Tesla, Sam Insull. This is over 100 years ago. And back then, the equation was the same. Generation has to equal load. They have to be balanced. For over 100 years, we had generation with duration, coal, natural gas, nuclear, stuff like that. So we understood, and the generation equaling load is a math equation, and it's based on probabilistic outcomes, and you need market signals. The entire industry has been obsessed with generation because we could control it. We could influence it. Load was never able to be controlled. It has been a dream it has been the dream of grid stakeholders and operators to be able to have load that could curtail, that could respond. And literally, if you look at some of the problems going back to the founding of the grid, it was understanding the load side uncertainty. And for years, going back, there was one book written in 1988 by some total nerds, like total visionaries who literally thanked the utility industry for dealing with the uncertainty of this idea of let's introduce price signals to allow entrepreneurs to support grid reliability and expand this ecosystem. So this has been a theory. Senate Bill 7 in 1999, ushering in the deregulation of ERCOT, completely changed the game. But we have just begun to scratch the surface. So what Bitcoin miners proved empirically is we can improve system efficiency. There is a no tool in the tool chest of grid operators. So, there's this narrative, we need more generation. That's probably true. But load can accomplish this uncertainty at a much lower and a free cost to grid stakeholders. So you've got hundreds of years of ancillary services, which think of those as insurance, to pay and bribe load to turn off. We don't need that as much anymore. Bitcoiners have proven all the subsidies that affect our price of electricity and get rate-based in and amortized socially across the network, we can reimagine all those. So we now have an economic catalyst engine that is empirical certainty that we can improve the utilization rate and the economies of scale of the most important energy system. So I cannot overstate what Bitcoiners have proven is literally a foundational movement to relaunching America and ensuring that the grid, which everyone complains about, it's like, oh, we don't have enough power, Google Power and AI, oh, everyone's scared. What Bitcoiners have proved, we have plenty of power most of the time. And by introducing more flexible load into the system where grid operators have certainty, it will disappear and free up power for all ratepayers in that ecosystem. That is a certainty statement, mutually beneficial for ratepayers, which are the voters. And so we have a tool that is not nearly being utilized enough. So that's why we found ourselves, we got to get involved in this, because I don't fully understand the ramifications, but I have certainty that the world is stressed and everyone needs more power. And the Bitcoiners are the one that are showing up and being the people that are advocating and bringing the change needed in an industry that is not prepared for change.
And then to carry on that, yeah. Can you just quickly describe, like, what is it about, like, you have a Bitcoin mining operation, but just in totality, what is it about a Bitcoin mine and Bitcoin that allows it to be more flexible than any other resource on the or load on the grid?
So a lot of us, you pay your electric bill at your house, at your home, at your business. The price of power is an input to your life. You're not going to respond to changes because the price of power is not flat. It changes based on scarcity. So the price of power goes up. Generation that is more expensive, like diesel peaker plants, turn on. But additionally, you don't turn off your AC. If it's 106 degrees, you ain't turning off your AC. I don't care what the price of power is. So, but Bitcoin miners, we're extremely price sensitive. And so, just as power generation or as power demand grows, different generation stacks, coal plants turn on, diesel turns on, the wind and solar, who knows what they're going to do. But as we need more power, more generations brought into the system. And then load, like, you're not going to turn down your load. So Bitcoiners, we take on that responsibility. And we're glad to do it because on a marginal economic basis, it's the right thing to do. So we can virtue signal all we want, like we're helping and all that. It is a economic certainty that we save more money by turning off. And so we literally help the grid and make money doing it. So this is this amazing concept of mutual benefit that helps all of y'all.
Yeah, and what I would add is that when a Bitcoin mine turns down, the Bitcoin network continues to function perfectly well because it's just one independent supplier to an aggregated source of demand, which is the Bitcoin network, which makes it unique in that respect. Now, turning to the problems in legislation, and all kind of with the backdrop of last year, or I don't know if it was last year in the last legislative session, Senator Lois Colcourt, which honestly she should be a Bitcoiner based on everything else that she values. She introduced a bill that was against the, I think, interest of the grid as well as Bitcoin mining, that would have, kind of forced a mandate of how much Bitcoin miners could participate in ancillary services to help stabilize the grid and make it more reliable. That reinforced for me that there was no one in the Senate that was an advocate for Bitcoin or that understood this. Turned to this legislative session, I'd spent quite a number of lunches orange pilling John over here, which he's getting closer. But Gideon has been very active. But let's talk about Lieutenant Governor Patrick had one of his top priorities, which is of the 25 or 30, one of them is the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, but another one of them is SB6, ERCOT reliability. Talk about first, before we get into HB3970, maybe, John, if you could articulate from what the legislature is trying to accomplish in that bill and what their concerns are, and then I'll let Gideon talk about the implications for Bitcoin miners.
Yeah, let me just start kind of going back to what you were talking about the last session, just briefly. The people in the building down the street, they don't know what they don't know. There is a certain lack of understanding when it comes to Bitcoin and how it helps the grid and helps reliability. Separately, they worry about transmission cost and how it gets allocated, but that impacts everyone. That's a large load. It's not a Bitcoin thing. And so it's so important, and I'm so glad that Gideon is so engaged this session. It's a game changer. And what can happen down there, because they don't know what they don't know. And with Senator Colcourt's bill, it was a strange thing. You have a $22 billion market in ERCOT, more or less. And she got word that Bitcoin was making $20 million in that market, and spent all this time trying to figure out how or why they should make $20 million in this $22 billion market, when that $20 million, it's not consumer savings. It's going to go to someone else that bids into that same ancillary service. And if you stop something like Bitcoin from being able to bid into it, well, now there's fewer bidders. So the price is going to go up. So it wasn't going to help consumers. It wasn't going to help reliability. And if I made a pie chart, I don't even know if you could see the line for $20 million in a $22 billion market. But why? Why did they bring it? Because someone somewhere was upset that $20 million wasn't going to them. And they had a voice down the street. And Bitcoin did not. And so that's what we're doing now. That's the game change. That's why the activism and advocacy is so important, because I think we can fall back on kind of a libertarian leaning. And I heard it yesterday in here, and Texas is so great and so libertarian, but it just takes a couple people in there that have a voice to be like, gosh, we're not getting our $20 million. And suddenly everything gets turned upside down. And there's, to paraphrase, Mark Twain, nothing so needs reforming as other people's habits, right? And so they want to go get that money and stop your habit to help them. That feeds into this session in SB6. That's to address load growth. There's a lot of growth coming on. For a while, load growth was pretty stagnant, and now you have a lot of large loads coming on in ERCOT and other markets as well. That includes Bitcoin mining, and I think they said it was up to 4 gigawatts in Texas and ERCOT now. But separate from that, you've got the electrification of oil and gas, and you've got the AI hyperscaling in the data centers. All these things show all this load growth. I think 140 gigawatts by 2030 is what ERCOT was forecasting. They might have come down on that.
And that's relative to 90 today.
Yeah, and so that's creating this alarm of how do we make sure that we have enough power? And really, you're only talking about, these real tight conditions, potentially, half of 1% of the time, because most of the time there's plenty of energy, there's an abundance, and that's where Bitcoin and AI data centers can curtail and provide that flexibility. But so the whole point of SB6 was to go, my gosh, we don't have enough power if all this new load comes in. What are we going to do? And the first thing they said was, well, let's make them all have backup power. And that would include Bitcoin, and that wouldn't make sense because y'all can curtail. So that changed somewhat, and they said, well, you can curtail now too. Either or, but at the same time, it's been discriminatory against Bitcoin, I would say. And secondly, they even put in another ancillary service or reliability service separate from all the others that exist. And they said, by the way, no, Bitcoin, you can't participate in this one. So that's where SB6 is right now. And it passed the Senate, and now it's over in the House, and it has a hearing today, and it's in State Affairs. And honestly, anyone can go over there, and they have a little kiosk, and you should talk to one of these folks or myself. But you can go over there and you can just put in your name and your company and your address, and you can put against SB6, and you don't have to public testify. You say, no, I don't want to. I just want to say I'm against it publicly. You can go do that today, should you choose.
Yeah, I'll recruit a handful of you guys to go do that. It'll be important. Gideon, talk about SB6 and its problems relative to what you guys are advancing with HB3970 in relation to each other, and why HB3970 is a much better market framework.
Yeah, SB6 has been fun. And it's really just fun. I mean, I like grid, market design conversations. The entire utility industry is set up to not change. And it's this, we need more control, we need more control. And there's a lot of truth to that for grid operators. But the grid is changing. And so what SB6 does, it kind of has an older mental model of, we need to put more restrictions. We need to put more, prescriptive language about compute coming to Texas. Well, what this really misses is an opportunity for the nuances that the AI data centers have proven. And so really our thesis going back years was Bitcoin mining is the most fungible manufacturing operation in the world. And it really shows us what's possible in a new class of compute called parallel processing compute that's latency agnostic. That was the nerd term. AI data centers do not have the same uptime needs as enterprise, hyperscale, bank record type data centers. So SB6 is prescriptive in assuming that all of these loads need to comply a certain way. It doesn't account for the innovation of flexible load and other things that we can't even imagine. And so, it is incredibly well-intentioned. Like when you're talking about dropping gigawatt, 5 gigawatt, deca-gigawatt era, here we come, like that is unheard of in grid growth. But when the market was deregulated, we saw similar growth. When the U.S. shale revolution happened in West Texas, we saw orders of magnitude increase. Why? Because we safely allowed for free market principles to be applied in Texas. And so SB6 doesn't fully account for how much freedom can unlock grid innovation in a safe way. And so it does discriminate against Bitcoin miners, and it really, it clamps down on growth. So there's this like mental model where it's a dichotomy of, oh, well, we can't have, a safe grid and we can't have growth. Well, we can if we apply these principles. And so that's where recruit the Bitcoiners. Send a signal that you want the most fungible, manufacturing operation in the world to come in and support grid stakeholders' reliability and innovation on a scale that no one's ever seen before. And so that's where, again, I know you could do this. You can just write a law. So I teamed up with Clayton Greer, who's an ERCOT expert, and will go down as probably the godfather of flexible load in Texas, because I didn't know how these rules work. And he and I just started riffing on a whiteboard, and I kept complaining. And we just came up with this idea. Let's write a law that empowers and legislates ERCOT with a new tool of flexible load and allows for, hey, if you're a big load and you're going to curtail and you're going to support off pricing signals and you're going to come off during a peak, you should get a bigger, faster interconnection. Like, let's go. Like, this is America. And so that's where, we just wrote a law. It's called HB3970, and it's been just incredibly fun because, one, it's given me a platform. Like, I get to go discuss the rules of logic and grid with state legislators. Like, that's fun for me. And I think that's fun for some of y'all in here too. And we can just show up. Like, this is totally doable.
So what's the status of that bill currently?
SB6?
3970.
3970 literally showed up late. Thank God I met John. We hired another lobbyist. We got going. We educated on the bill. We got it passed out of the House unopposed. We got the Sierra Club, Texas Public Policy Foundation, and other conservative groups to be for the bill. We brought the most unlikely collaborators out there to support a concept that is uniting Americans around a shared idea. Like, that was like a holy hell moment. Like, most of you guys probably watch the ESPN and the sports. I don't do that. I watch C-SPAN. And when our bill got passed, I was high-fiving everyone in the office because this sent a signal that we are onto something that can unite people. So we're out of the House. Yes. So we got it passed out of the House, and then there's like all these other rules, and so we're learning those. And today I'm in town to speak here, but also because I'm commenting on SB6, and so there's a lot of great stuff in there. So we just need to not discriminate against the Bitcoin.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Can you give a little pre-read on your testimony for SB6? Wait.
Let me just quickly while you're here. HB 3970, write it down. It passed the House. It needs to pass the Senate. It needs to have a hearing in the Senate. You're like, it's passed unanimously, right? It's good. No, we don't know because the Senate really likes SB6, and they may not want to hear 3970. So it's going to take some work. And for y'all, it's as simple as for Senator Schwartner, who chairs Business and Commerce, and for Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, just to call and say, hey, we support HB 3970. We're Bitcoin miners. We love HB 3970. Please give it a hearing.
And don't blindly do this. You can literally Google HB 3970. Go read it. It's super short. It's like 3 pages, and there's great stuff. Use ChatGPT to get up to speed on words, but go read it. And if you
summarize like the key points of HB 3970.
Okay, so what we're doing is what 3970 does is it creates a new voluntary load construct that allows for anybody, we don't discriminate, anybody, so to come in and apply for large amounts of power and best support grid reliability and energy innovation. So if you agree to come off during when our power is stressed, then you get a bigger, faster interconnection. We on a long enough time frame, we can fit hundreds, if not thousands of gigawatts in Texas. But for the next few years, we have to have a regulatory framework that helps prioritize what loads best support grid reliability, innovation, and also opportunities for economic development and jobs. And so AI data centers can agree to this. It's tech neutral. Bitcoin miners, AI data centers, flexible loads for manufacturing of the future. Like, this is a construct that allows anyone to come in and do what they already would have done, which is improve their profit margins and support reliability.
And so it's fair to say that SB6 has been passed out of the Senate. Now there's a House hearing on that. We need to oppose that. HB 3970 is passed out of the House, but doesn't yet have a hearing in the Senate, and we need to advance that. But they're effectively competing bills, and one is a more free market principle.
They certainly have competing kind of components, but they also both have really critical elements that can be merged together.
And so is the merger kind of the vision that you guys are pushing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what's been great. I mean, I just want to throw out another crazy ass story. I ended up getting invited to go meet with President freaking Trump at Mar-a-Lago, a while back. Like, that was wild. And what we talked about? There was like 10 Bitcoin miners, and I was like the only oil and gas guy there. So we riffed hard, and I told him how hot my wife is. Like, the guy's an animal. So what we talked about? I was like, here's what we're doing in Texas. And I was like able to relate to him, like with Texas and a lot of stuff. But like, I told him what we're gonna do. And like, so, you know, and then after that, Lieutenant Governor reached out. We had a great meeting. So that's what's been fun. This whole Texas process is wild, but we have United States of America. I met with the vice president, the governor of Texas, the lieutenant governor, and several other state and leaders. And like, we're not shy. We're not hiding what we're doing. I BCC'd the outside general counsel of some of the Wire Council. We're not hiding what we're doing. We're Bitcoiners, and we deeply care about grid innovation. And so that's what's fun. Like, you go, I mean, John can attest, you go do legislation work and everyone's like, what's this person thinking? What's that? It's like, well, we just want a more efficient energy system. So like, if you can help with that, holler at your boys.
So the final word is we're going to get a few of you to go up there and oppose SB6, and then we'll call our senators, Congress people, the governor's office to support HB 3970.
Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and Senator Schwartner are the two to call that will make the decision on 3970. And a lot of times it's about opposition in that building. So calls of support are kind of rare, and they can sometimes make a bigger difference.
Okay.
Can you give these gentlemen a huge round of applause real quick? Thank you so much.